Ivy and Bean. What's the Big Idea? By Annie Barrows and Sophie Blackhall. Bean gets antsy. There had been a problem in Bean's house. The problem was staples. Bean loved staples. She loved them so much that she had stapled things that weren't supposed to be stapled. The things looked better stapled, but her mother didn't think so. And now Bean was outside. She was going to be outside for a long time. She looked at her backyard. Same old yard, same old trampoline, same old dinky plastic playhouse, same old pile of buckets and ropes and stilts. None of them was any fun. Maybe she could play Junkyard Crash. Junkyard Crash was when you stacked up all the stuff you could find and then drove the toy car into the stack. But it was no fun alone. Bean got up and scuffed across the nice green lawn until she reached the not-so-nice green lawn. This part of Bean's lawn had holes and lumps in it. The lumps were mostly places where Bean had buried a treasure for kids of the future. Bean picked up a shovel. To heck with kids of the future, she was bored now. And maybe a secret admirer had added something interesting to her treasure, like a ruby skull or a dinosaur egg. Bean didn't bury her treasure very deep, so it was easy to dig up. This treasure was inside a paper bag, but the paper bag wasn't doing so well. It wasn't really a paper bag anymore. "Holy moly," Bean said loudly, "I've found a treasure." She pulled the clumps of paper apart. What a disappointment. No ruby skull, no dinosaur egg. Just the same stuff she had buried 2 weeks ago. Dental floss, tweezers, and a magnifying glass. Some treasure. Bean flopped over on her stomach. "I'm dying of boredom," she moaned, hoping her mother would hear. "I'm dying." She coughed in a dying sort of way. Ack! And then lay still. Anyone looking from the porch would think she was dead. And then that person would feel bad. Bean lay still. Very still. She could hear her heart thumping. She could feel the hairs on her arm moving. Bean opened her eyes. There was an ant scurrying over her arm. Bean pulled the magnifying glass over and peered at the ant. Her arm was like a mountain, and the little ant was like a mountain climber stumbling along with a tired expression on his face. Poor hard-working ant. She knew how he felt because sometimes her parents made her go hiking. She watched as he dodged between hairs and charged down the other side of her arm toward the ground. She offered him a blade of grass to use as a slide, but that seemed to confuse him. He paused, looked anxiously right and left, and then continued on her arm. He had a plan, and he was going to stick to it. Bean watched through the magnifying glass as he scuttled into the grass, rushing along the ground between blades. He was in a big hurry. He met another ant by banging into him, but they didn't even stop to talk. They zipped off in opposite directions. Bean followed her ant to a patch of dry dirt. There he plunged down a hole. "Come back," whispered Bean. She liked her ant. Maybe he would come out if she poked his house. She found a thin stick and touched the top of the hole. 4 ants streamed out and raced in 4 different directions. Bean didn't think any of them was her ant. Bean watched the ant hole for a long time. Ants came and went. They all seemed to know where they were going. They all seemed to have important jobs. None of them seemed to notice that they were puny little nothings compared to Bean. Bean dragged the hose toward the ant hole. She didn't turn the hose on. That would be mean. But she let a little bit of water dribble into the hole and watched as the dirt erupted with ants. Thousands of ants flung themselves this way and that, racing to safety. "Help, help," whispered Bean. "Flood." The ants ran in lines away from the water. Some were holding little grains above their heads. They were the hero ants. But even the non-hero ants were busy. They were all far too busy to notice Bean watching them through the magnifying glass. To them, she was like a planet. She wasn't part of their world. She was too big and too far away for them to see. Bean looked up into the sky. What if someone was watching her through a giant magnifying glass and thinking the same thing she was? What if she was as small as an ant compared to that someone? And what if that someone was an ant compared to the next world after that? Wow. Bean waved at the sky. Hi out there, she thought. Just deserts. Crisscross applesauce, boys and girls, said Miss Arubitate. Along with the rest of the second graders, Bean crisscross applesauced. Then she sat on her hands for good measure. Rug time was tough. It was the rug. The rug had a map of the United States of America on it. Each day at rug time, all the second graders rushed to sit on Colorado. Colorado was the best state because it had the Rocky Mountains in it. That meant whoever sat on Colorado got to yell, "I rock!" Bean was in Iowa. She didn't rock. She could rock. She could lean way over, push Vanessa a tiny little bit, slap the corner of Colorado, and say, "I rock." But then Miss Arubitate would get mad. Bean knew that from experience. So Bean sat on her hands. Next door in South Dakota, Ivy was trying to cross one eye without crossing the other. She had been trying all day. She didn't care much about Colorado. Once she sat on it without even noticing. Bean decided to pay attention to what Miss Arubitate was saying. Today, class, we are having a special science lesson. Science? Bean stopped thinking about Colorado. Science was usually dirt or fish, and Bean liked both of them. But now, Miss Arubitate went on. A team of scientists from the 5th grade will be presenting a report on global warming. And what do I expect from you, class? Respectful listening, everyone answered. Almost everyone. McAdam was pulling nubbies out of the rug, and he didn't say anything. Bean said it, but she felt only a little bit respectful inside. Nobody listened respectfully to second graders. It wasn't fair. Let's welcome our 5th grade scientists, called out Miss Arubitate. The door to the classroom opened, and 4 students shuffled in. Their names were Juan, Matt, Adrian, and Shayna. Only Shayna talked. Juan, Matt, and Adrian held the posters. Shayna tossed her hair over her shoulders. This is a report on global warming, she said. Adrian showed the desert. This is a picture of the Gobi Desert, but pretty soon almost everywhere is going to look like this because of global warming. Juan showed the polar bear. Juan held up a picture of a worried-looking polar bear. Now, Shayna said loudly, global warming is a total disaster and it's all our fault. On the rug, the second graders looked at one another. This did not sound good. When school was over, Ivy and Bean slumped like 2 sacks of potatoes on the bench outside their classroom. What you doing? Asked Leo. Ivy and Bean looked up. We're worrying about the polar bears, said Ivy glumly. What polar bears? Asked Leo. Leo was in a different class. There's not enough ice for them to live on, said Ivy. They're going to die out like the dinosaurs, said Bean. The heat's going to get them, said Ivy. Leo kicked their bench. You guys want to play stomp tag? Ivy and Bean stared at him. It's the pollution, said Bean. From cars, said Ivy. And cow poop, Bean reminded her. Leo made a snorty sound. He thought cow poop was funny. Ivy and Bean frowned at him. "I'll be it," he said. "What?" said Bean. "I'll be it. You can even stomp me for free if you want," said Leo. He stuck his foot out. "Go ahead." Bean shook her head. "We're busy," she said. Leo looked up and down the breezeway. It was empty. "What are you busy doing?" "We're busy worrying," said Bean. After a while, Leo found some other kids who wanted to play stomp tag, and Ivy and Bean got up and began to worry their way home. "Poor trees," said Ivy, patting one. "Yeah," said Bean. She kicked a car parked at the curb. "Take that!" she yelled, and felt a little better. At home, Bean's mom had heard about global warming, and even about the polar bears. Bean's dad knew about it too. Bean's older sister, Nancy, said, "Ha, that's nothing. Just wait until you find out about the oceans." "What about the oceans?" asked Bean quickly. "That's for me to know and you to find out," said Nancy. "But it's terrible," she added. Bean was too worried even to throw something at her. She went into the backyard and wandered across the lawn. Poor grass, poor trees. She squatted down by the patch of dirt where the ants lived and patted it. Poor ants. She hated global warming.